Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. Welcome to the EOS webinar series at James Cook University, Singapore. I'm very, very delighted to be having our guest speaker, Dr. Nikolina Koposic, who has joined us all the way from Finland to talk about how to create resilience in small firms in times of crisis. In a moment, I'm going to say a bit more about experiences, but to start with, I want to mention that this webinar will be recorded for publicity purposes. Attendees will be able to ask questions at any point, and to do this, you just need to use the Q&A section function. However, the questions and answers will be at the end of the presentation. And at the very end, also, there will be a satisfaction poll and survey that you can use to give us some feedback on your experiences in the seminar. However, if there are technical issues during the presentation, by all means, you can use the chat button, which is quite different from the Q&A function, to communicate with us, and then we'll be able to pick this up. So without further ado, I'm delighted to welcome Nikolina to James Cook University, Singapore. And in particular to the ethics organizations and society webinar series. Nikolina is a senior researcher at Lorry, University of Applied Sciences, Finland, and an academy research fellow at the Academy of Finland. Nikolina also holds the title of docent in bracket adjunct professor at the University of Turku in Finland, and has associate editor of business ethics, the Environment and Responsibility channel. Our research focuses on international marketing, entrepreneurship, the role of individuals in corporate branding, and the co-creation of value in business-to-business relationships and networks. She's particularly studied the impact of interactive network branding for SMEs in business markets. And Nikolina and I have collaborated on a research project that has been published. We are working on another one at the moment. So without further ado, Nikolina, welcome to JCU. Welcome to your presentation. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel. Thank you, and welcome all. So as Emmanuel nicely introduced me, I'm Nikolina Koposic, and I'm not gonna talk about myself any further because he nicely presented me. The only small change is that I'm not anymore senior researcher, but a principal researcher at Laura, University of Applied Sciences.
Apologies.
So after getting, yeah, it just happened recently after I got a project. So it's been a nice kind of promotion that happened recently. But thank you, Emmanuel. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so today I will talk about how to create resilience in small firms in times of crisis as a part of my project that I'll mention to you on the next slide. But you might wonder, why is this topic even important? Why would you be interested in it? Well, most organizations, if not all, and I would actually say all, have been impacted by disruptions, crises, and all kinds of disturbances recently. And it includes pandemic, natural disasters, geopolitical events, cyber attacks, fraud, even human error in a company, or actually a combination of all these causes. And these days, the crises are just coming one after another and building up. So it's quite complicated. And these types of events are impacting consumer demand, employee health and safety, supply chain, like processes. They are causing physical damages, loss of business customers, reputational damage, and exponentially increase the cost of doing business. And that's why many businesses went bankrupt recently, quite many. So the nature, frequency, and magnitude of these disruptions have caused organizations to actually evaluate their business resilience and actually see, do they have one? And if not, to build one. So business resilience has become a strategic imperative of organizations across every industry and also occupying every size of a company. So therefore, in this webinar, we will focus on exploring resilience of small firms in times of crisis. And just a couple words on the project that I got. As you can see, funding period just started on 1st of September, and it will last 4 years. And the aim of this project is to examine interactive network branding for creating resilience of small firms in times of crisis. And I will present you what interactive network branding is, what does it mean, because it's a new concept introduced in my PhD thesis. And that will be kind of towards the end of this seminar. So the insights you will hear today come from this project. For now, we did the literature review. We are trying to recruit companies. We have quite many great ideas. And I employed a postdoc, Dr. Kumar, who is working with me. And we are, I think, achieving quite a lot already, but we are hoping for quite significant contributions to academia and practice. So you might wonder, what is resilience? And it's quite a complicated concept. It's been examined in many, many, many different fields, and everyone is giving their own overview, their own definition. So here I'll present you just 4 definitions. The first one starts by a National Research Council definition that is kind of the broadest. So it includes quite a broad overview, and it's been kind of used as a generalized definition. So resilience is the ability to prepare and plan for, absorb, recover from, and more successfully adapt to adverse events. Then we have another definition that says that the concept of resilience is closely related with the capability and the ability of an element to return to a stable state after disruption. So see, this can also be used in biology. So when the notion of resilience is applied to organizations, this definition does not drastically change. So resilience is therefore related to both the individual and organizational response to turbulences. And here we see that they are combining this individual entrepreneurial level, but also organizational and firm level. And then another one says that resilience is the capacity to act or react in response to these unpredictable events, to prevent them from having a negative impact on the organization and its profitability. So here they are focusing only on the firm level and the outcome of their activities as a profit. And finally, we have the adaptive capability of a supply chain to prepare for and or respond to disruptions, to make a timely and cost-effective recovery, and therefore progress to a post-disruption state of operations, ideally a better state than prior to the disruption. So this study focuses on a supply chain or a network level, where companies are interacting and connected to each other. But despite this extensive research on resilience that's been for many years now going, a universally accepted definition and a roadmap for achieving resilience is still lacking. And now you might wonder why resilience of SMEs. And SMEs stand for small and medium-sized enterprises. And those are the companies that have a minimum 1 person represented the company, so the founder, for instance, and up to 250 employees. And if we follow the EU definition, SMEs have less than 50 million euros in turnover and less than 43 million euros in balance sheet total. And actually they present 99% of all businesses in the EU. And I would say in almost all the markets. In some markets, it's like 98%, somewhere dropped to 95%, but most of the markets, SMEs are the most representative companies. And this makes them very, very important, even crucial actors for survival of the local, national, and global markets. And at the same time, SMEs are facing quite a lot of challenges, even in times that are not turbulent, due to their small size, such as lack of financial, human, or other types of resources, which makes them quite vulnerable in today's turbulent market. And here I would like to present this VUCA world, and VUCA is an acronym that stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And it originated actually from the military world, but it has been widely adopted, especially in this turbulent time that is the new normal, in various fields, including business, leadership, and strategic planning. And each this element of the acronym represents a characteristic of the changing and rapidly changing environment that organizations are often facing. So we have volatility, which symbolizes the unpredictable changes that define our current reality. We have uncertainty that signifies yeah, the erosion of the ability to use past events, predictions, as well as historical experiences, which you would usually use to shape the future, but these days you can't use it. So there's uncertainty about the present, but also about the future, and you have no idea what's coming. And then the complexity refers to the reality that our world is more complex than ever before. And it's hard to understand what are the causes and what are the effects of specific crises. And ambiguity relates to a lack of clear meaning about the event, about the crisis, disruption that the company is facing. So the combination of all these are actually creating the new normal that every companies, especially SMEs, are dealing with and kind of facing it in a challenging way. And now I would like to present you a quote, or actually a little bit of text from Archer Technologies, which is EOS company that talks about navigating uncertainty and how to create resilience. So it's a consulting company, which is quite interesting if you're willing to study a little bit more. So risks that threaten the resilience of your organization come in many forms: health crises, cyber threats, competition, business model changes, business incidents, and supply chain disruptions. So in fact, risks impacting an organization can often cause a domino effect. So for example, weak security controls in a third party, so for instance, your supplier can result in a cyber breach to your organization. And then the breach may result in exposure of your customer data and result in a disruption of systems that require IT disaster recovery that will influence financial losses maybe and reputation damage. So this interconnected nature of risks illustrated in this example demonstrates that building resilience isn't an isolated activity of a company, and resilience actually must be integrated across the whole organization. And I would like to now focus on 3 levels of resilience, and this is how we see the resilience and how we divided it in our project with the aim to better operationalize it. So we have first entrepreneurial or individual level of analysis. So it's the founder of the company, for instance, that's having specific skills to deal with disruption and to build resilience. Then we have a firm or organizational level, and then supply chain or network level. But what is missing from the literature is the holistic view and a holistic strategy, actually, on SME resilience. And while I'm not saying that we managed to find a perfect tailored solution that will solve all the issues of SMEs in times of crisis, we do have some ideas and conceptual frameworks that I would like to present to you towards the end of this presentation and also get your insights on it. So first, we are starting with individual or entrepreneurial level and skills that foster resilience. So the entrepreneurs should have a strong leadership skills, but also lead highly motivated individuals, because one without another is quite challenging. Then you should have rapid decision-making capability so that you can respond to these crises and all kinds of complexities that are ongoing in the crisis. And you should have a successful stress coping, because really stressful situations such as a crisis are demanding this skill. Then you need to have emotional and cognitive control under pressure, but you should also be able to learn from previous experiences. And that consists of learning from success, but also failure. And failure seems to be even a better teacher than success. And you can learn from your own failure, from previous enterprises, for instance, that failed, but you will learn quite a lot to kind of avoid that failure this time. You can learn from ongoing small mistakes that are happening every day in your team, for instance, or that you're making yourself. But also quite a nice learning from failure is when you're learning from the failure of other companies from your kind of network. or your competitors. So you can really see what they did wrong and try to avoid it. And finally, you should have coping and defense mechanisms to adapt to various situations. Now, moving to the organizational level of resilience, we have quite a lot of studies examined there, but just some of references you can find on the bottom of the page. And what they say is that at the organizational level, you should have capability of generating capital, but also you should be flexible. It refers to manufacturing flexibility, but also strategic and operational flexibility. There should be process expertise in a company that you can then adapt as needed. Then you should have technological innovation and adoption along the way, but also good organizational culture that fosters learning and fosters these rapid changes and adaptation to the crisis. And then there should be effective communication with stakeholders, and it includes both internal and external stakeholders, and strategic diversification of the customer base, because it's needed in times of crisis that you can rely still on some customers, and also relying on alternative sources, for instance, from the supply chains, that if the supply chain is disrupted, you should have some alternatives. You should use mobilization strategies and develop business continuity plans and disaster recovery. And now I would like to present you a couple of slides that I found at the official website from the US Department of Homeland Security. And they have quite a lot of information to specifically firms who are dealing with crises and what they can do kind of to create resilience. So business impact analysis predicts the consequences of a disruption to your business and gathers information needed to develop recovery strategies and create resilience. And there are a couple of business disruption scenarios to consider on the left-hand side. So you should first try to kind of check and report later on. Is there a physical damage to a building, damage or breakdown to machinery or equipment? Do you have restricted access to your building? Is there interruption in supply chain that you cannot get transportation of your goods from the supplier, for instance? Utility outage or damage or loss or corruption of information technology, which is really, really important. And all these have potential impacts. So you should identify the operational and financial impacts that are resulting from the disruption of the business. And possible effects are including loss or delayed sales and income, increased expenses, even some regulatory fines and penalties that results from this problem. Or you could have customer dissatisfaction that will then result in loss of maybe positive reputation, and you could have delay of new business plans. But also what's important here to consider is timing and duration of this disruptive event. So the point in time when a business function or process is disrupted can have a significant bearing on the loss sustained. So for instance, if a store is damaged in the weeks prior to the holiday shopping season, it might not kind of influence a lot of current sale, but it might influence the sale and loss of substantial amount of holiday season sales if it kind of gets really disrupted and influences the sales in the couple of weeks. A power outage lasting a few minutes would not cause inconvenience for most businesses, but one lasting for hours would result in significant business losses. So all these kind of timing, duration, and what is event that is disrupting is very important kind of to define, detect, and analyze. And here, this is quite interesting business impact analysis worksheet that companies can use. So this report should document the potential impacts resulting from the disruption, and scenarios resulting in significant business interruptions should be assessed in terms of financial impact. And then those should be compared with the costs for possible recovery strategies as well. And you should always prioritize the order of events for restoring these business functions. So business processes with the greatest operational or financial impacts should be restored first. So identifying and evaluating the impact of disaster on businesses provides the basis for investment in actually prevention of the future crises and mitigation strategies. And now I would like to present you a couple of these strategies for risk mitigation that, again, governmental side of US Homeland Security is suggesting. So the impacts from hazards can be reduced by investing in this mitigation. So if there is a potential for significant impact, then creating a mitigation strategy should be a really, really high priority. And as you know, not all disasters can be prevented, but there are many mitigation strategies that can reduce damage and the outcome of the disaster on your company. So implementing these strategies before a disaster may make it easier for your business to recover. So for instance, you could research applicable fire prevention regulations, national standards, and best practices to identify these mitigation opportunities and requirements. You could speak to your insurance agent and kind of see if they can provide consultation services to help you customize protection for the new or renovated facility. And you can also maybe be eligible for reduced insurance premiums this time. You should consider selecting a building site that is not subject to all these kind of various floods, storm surges, ground shaking from earthquakes. So building construction should meet applicable building codes that include requirements for fire protection and life safety. And also you should consider looking into strategies to mitigate business disruption that include providing uninterruptible power supplies and an emergency standby generator for critical equipment. So developing a business continuity plan is the next step for recovery strategies and actually another method of risk mitigation. So this is the final slide from these governmental suggestions and instructions that I will present. So this presents the example of business continuity team organization kind of structure. So you should organize this continuity team and compile a business continuity plan to manage a disruption. So you should clearly define the scope, objectives, and assumptions of the business continuity plan. Also, you should define the roles and responsibilities for each team member so that everyone knows what to do if the crisis appears. Then you should identify the lines of authority, succession of management, and delegation of authority, and address interaction with external organizations that are including, for instance, contractors and vendors. So if you're interested more into this, if you are coming from a company side, you can learn more about how to put together and test these business continuity plans. And they have some excellent YouTube videos on the US Department of Homeland Security webpage. So you can just go on this ready.gov site. And now I would like to also present you another perspective of consultancy, especially interesting if you're coming from a business side and a company. This is from McKinsey 2023 report, and they present 6 key dimensions for withstanding future crises. So first, they say that you should build business model resilience through offering different products, briefings, or scenario exercises that will guide quick decision-making and planning inside of your company. Then you should design reputational resilience through a clear internal alignment about what your firm stands for, but also what you don't stand for. And they offer a really good example of this Ukrainian war, where companies are clearly designing reputational resilience by claiming that they stand against the war. Then you should create organizational resilience via fostering inclusive governance structures and open, honest dialogues inside of the firm, but also with external stakeholders. You should safeguard operational resilience by protecting supply chains, and so your whole network. You can do that by simulating and planning with your, for instance, suppliers, the extreme disruptions while assessing the resilience of your close suppliers, but also of your suppliers, because their failure will also kind of come and find you ultimately. Then you should ensure technological resilience by maintaining connectivity, user experience, managing different data access, and ensuring protection against cyber attacks, which is becoming really important issue. And finally, constructing financial resilience. So you can do that by developing crisis protocols in advance of the crisis. And now we are moving from this organizational level towards the supply chain resilience or the network level. Again, there is quite a lot of studies, even the most amount of studies we managed to find in the literature review is on the supply chain resilience. And here are a couple of references at the bottom, but what they say is that you should focus on collaboration with a network of specialized partners. You should timely exchange information so that everyone is aware of the current situation, but also plans of what comes next. Then there is interaction of internal and external resources, which is important. For instance, manufacturing production, human labor, transportation networks, suppliers, production flexibility. So in terms of crisis, some studies have found that companies are even kind of sharing their human labor, especially in the UK, companies are sharing the employees in stores to better handle the increased demand for products. Then there is collaboration between non-governmental organizations and businesses, which is important in times of crisis. Then you should follow governmental policies on, of course, supply chain level and policies for network reconfiguration after the crisis. But what's the most important maybe is stakeholder involvement so that you can basically build resilience on the whole supply chain level. And after presenting these three levels, we are coming into the question, what about holistic strategy? We find out that there is no strategy that combines all these levels. So we have individual entrepreneurial level with individual skills to build resilience. Then we have organizational level with firm level strategies that companies are using to create a more resilient company, but also supply chain or network level strategies that companies are using with their partners. But what we see and what we're aiming to do in this project is to create a holistic strategy, because we believe that companies cannot separate these three levels. In other words, if they want to achieve resilience, they need to combine all of these three levels. And our suggestion is to use interactive network branding as a strategy. So now, finally, I'm presenting to you what is interactive network branding. So interactive stands for activities or interactions between individuals, between firm representatives, between people who are working inside of one company and another one, and then they interact to create something better for both of their companies. Then we have a network, which denotes a market space where these interactions are happening and where actually companies are embedded. And then we have a branding as the outcome of interactions between companies in the network. So we have a couple of definitions that are quite old, but can be nicely applicable to these settings if we include resilience into it. So for instance, interactive network branding is an intertwined process of networking and branding in which companies develop their corporate identity and reputation, which are two aspects of a corporate brand, while aiming to create a desired position in a network. And here we could add, which would influence their resilience. Then interactive network branding refers to business interactions between SMEs that develop their corporate brands while firms are acting in their roles and aiming towards the creation of a desired network position, and basically resilience. So interactive network branding is, in this sense, is a core element of resilience strategy for SMEs. And how we see it, in a sense, is that branding and a network position can be ultimately a synonym of resilience. Because if an SME can create a strong brand and strong position in a network by collaborating with their partners, by being recognized for their achievements, by creating a strong reputation, for instance, on the market, it means that the company has figured out the holistic way of achieving resilience. And now I'll present just these two figures as the main building blocks of the interactive network branding. So on the left-hand side, you see this focal company, the biggest circle, where we have internal interactions between people who are internal to the company. So it can be a founder with a couple of employees. So like 1-2 people to up to 250 people. So they are like collaborating, interacting internally, and they're creating the identity of a company as a result. As you can see on the right-hand side, we have identity creation as a result of internal interpersonal interactions. And then we have on the left-hand side, boundary spanning interactions, which are interactions of your company and your employees, your firm representatives, with those of your closest business partners. So those first circles from the focal company. And you act as a boundary spanner because you are creating these, you are spanning the boundaries between your firm and another firm, and you are interacting and co-creating something. And you are influencing something that's more than just identity and reputation, and we will see that in a moment. But what I want to present is this external interaction that happens with the companies that are not directly connected to you, but they are connected to your partners. So we see these final, the most kind of separated companies, circles on the left-hand side, and these kind of connections where they are still interacting with your partners and having an influence on your company. And these external interpersonal interactions are creating your reputation, as can be seen on the right-hand side. So we have internal interactions creating identity, external interactions creating reputation, and identity and reputation are being two parts of a corporate brand. And in between, we have boundary spanning interpersonal interactions that are co-creating both identity and reputation. So there's something holistic in between. Through communication with the closest partners, you are kind of communicating your brand, but you're also being kind of having reflection on how others see your company. And this can be nicely kind of transferred to resilience. You can build resilience inside, but also by getting feedback and collaborating in these boundary spanning interactions with your closest partners. So basically, by combining the branding and business network research, interactive network branding explores how SMEs can survive and sustain their competitiveness in times of crisis, specifically by adopting their business strategies and relying more on strategic internal and external actions by individual firm representatives. And now, just to give you another kind of perspective from the consultancy firm, and here we have a report from a brand trust, again, recent report on creating resilience through a strong brand. So they say that the level of company's brand induced resilience, so they're connecting resilience with a strong brand, can be determined by examining 10 indicators. So the brand trust consulting identified those indicators, and they're conducting the survey with more than 200 CEOs, top decision makers, as well as crisis and resilience experts from 3 different countries, from Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. And the findings are the following. So they say that you should create price premium and achievability to assert higher prices and not kind of have a need to even lower the prices in times of crisis. Then volume premium, so the knowledge to maintain or continuously increase sales and offer customers kind of the ecosystem or the network where they feel safe. Then brand advocacy, it's the know-how, how to turn customers into loyal fans and be actually recommended and have the increased reputation. Then sustainability refers to the power to withstand trends or to set them actually and gain importance for the customer. Adaptability is the skill of adapting new business models and being able to expand into new markets. Then you should achieve brand experience excellence. So the expertise to qualitatively convey performances, values, and positioning across different kind of brand touch points. Indispensability is the experience to adapt, again, new business models and expand to new markets. Social relevance is the intention of providing a socio-ecological benefits beyond the simple product that you are selling. Employee pride is the ambition to attract the right talent and to increase employee efficiency and reduce fluctuation. And finally, awareness is the ability to achieve high awareness of your product, of your brand among customers. And what this company, the Brand Trust, argues is that it's crucial that companies master not just some of these indicators, but satisfy all of them at a higher level. And the final slide I'm going to present you is what comes next in our kind of plans for the project. So next, we are planning to empirically investigate this model. And this is just kind of a simplified presentation of, on the left-hand side, what kind of struggles and disruptions the SMEs are facing today, and it's still applicable, and how they can create a path to resilience in times of crisis, but also how can they do that while using interactive network branding as a strategy. So besides having this collaboration, which is inherent part of the interactive network branding already, we are trying to now bring these two different lenses of innovation and sustainability. So how can innovation, through collaboration with partners, for instance, open innovation, influence the path to resilience? And how can sustainability in the whole network, so your sustainability, but also sustainability of your partners, influence path to resilience? And how can this all be combined in one holistic strategy? So now I would like to thank you for your attention and for bearing with me while trying to explain these different aspects and where our project is currently. And I would like to invite you to collaborate with us. So if you're academic and you see that you have complementary aspects to our research, you would like to write papers with us or even contribute to our book. We are soon editing the book on crisis and resilience. You're free to contact me. Please do so. If you're maybe an SME or a company that's struggling today, and you see that there are some aspects here that you heard that could help you further, and if you would like to share your experience with us and get some sort of feedback, consulting from us, please contact me. And also, if you're some societal actor, so not in academia or in a business, but you see some touch points where we could collaborate, please do not hesitate to write to me. So thank you one more time. And now there's some list of references if you're interested. And I'm gonna end the sharing and open the floor for questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nicolina. Very, very great presentation. Thank you very much.
Exactly 35 minutes.
Indeed, I have to. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And you're not just good with timekeeping. I've worked with you on a couple of papers. You're very good with your writing as well. So I invite colleagues that are interested in this line of research to get in touch with Nicolina, as she's mentioned. So very great presentation. I'm going to go to the questions and answers. So colleagues online, if you can put your questions in the Q&A function, using the Q&A to make it not just a wholly academic project, but indeed making it more amenable to different audiences. And right in the audiences, we also have people hopefully from SME, from the third sector, from academia. So if I may start with just asking you, what kind of disruption do you think SMEs in Singapore should be prepared for? Think, for example, about some of the businesses in important industries such as electronics and financial services. So as you would expect, we do have quite a number of audiences from Singapore. So I think it would be good to know, okay, how do we contextualize these entrepreneurial resilience in small firms in the Southeast Asian context?
Well, thank you for this question. As I'm currently based in Finland, I have some experience in the EOS. I don't have that much experience in Singapore, unfortunately. So maybe Emmanuel can contribute to this question as well. But as you could see, I presented some of the US governmental instructions, and you could see how they see the resilience and what's important there. And if you notice, they focus on the floods, earthquakes, and all these kind of regular disruptions that are influencing the companies and that they should constantly be prepared for. So I think that maybe Singapore governmental sides could also have some of these general insights of reoccurring disruptions. But what I think is that on a global level, we have these crises that are now appearing, like a pandemic, supply chain level crises, wars that are now going on. And what's important is maybe not so contextualized crisis level, but the resilience in a sense that you need to be able to handle multiple crises at the same time. And those are being like kind of having ripple effects coming one after another and having a combination that's influencing all levels of your kind of resilience. So it's impacting how you as an individual and entrepreneur need to deal with multiple decision making quickly to respond to the crisis, but also how you deal when your supply chain goes and falls apart. You cannot count on deliveries from outside. So how can you create maybe shorter delivery lines inside of your like business network locally? So I think that I would kind of generalize it a bit further than to contextualize it on a specific level, because I think the further crisis will again be so disrupting the markets on a general level and influencing you in Singapore, even from Finland, for instance.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much for that response. And you're right, many of these crises are global in nature. And I think your model where you talked about the three, a few of the things, levels. The three levels of resilience, but also the impact analyses, all of them seems usable to me in different environments, maybe with some contextualization, but I think they appear to be usable in multiple institutional environments. I'll go to the next question. So we have a question also from Peter, and the question: your focus on resilience seems mostly on networking and branding, but is not also about how you manage your people, the way you produce and market your products and services. I think Peter is interested in knowing the human resource aspect of things and how important this is.
So basically, as I presented, there are those three levels, and the interactive network branding combines all three. But we have this individual entrepreneurial level where a company or individual needs to create skills to kind of be resilient and to be able to lead the and now, okay, let me just be able to read a little bit more. Yes, so the entrepreneur needs to lead the firm, its immediate employees, but also be able to kind of respond to the business partners and their needs. So what you here mention is how to manage your people and how to produce and market. So marketing, human resources, and all these kind of things. Some would go also on organizational firm level. So how to create marketing of your products, of your services in times of crisis. It's slightly a bit different. So it's also different if you target final consumers or B2B companies. So my expertise on a B2B level. So for instance, if you want to do kind of marketing, or basically it's a relationship building in times of crisis, you want to provide services and your products that will help other companies in times of crisis. So you are maybe not trying to serve some other kind of needs that were relevant in times of before the crisis, but you want to kind of specialize and focus on what your colleagues, what your partners especially need. And you need to be aware that there are quite many disruptions that result in bankruptcies. So quite many supply chain actors and the network actors are just going bankrupt. So you're left with less and less partners to rely on. So you need to kind of see, do you need to start producing products in-house? Do you have even stronger connections between the most important partners where you are sharing this responsibility and trying to kind of keep each other alive so that you can handle and survive, but also satisfy your customers and maybe final consumers. Also, what could be interesting here is that you can try collaboration with your competitors. And that happens in times of crisis. For instance, pandemic taught us that these big pharmaceutical companies are actually started to collaborate and do this competition. So collaboration with the biggest, fiercest competitors. So they managed to share their kind of secrets that would never be shared in the normal times. But they did it so that they can try to find a cure for pandemic and for COVID-19. And they actually just open. And in that way, they kind of managed to survive. So you need to focus on what kind of skills and these kind of crisis management abilities you need to and capabilities develop individually. Then you go into your team, what kind of capabilities you need for the team to be resilient. And then other departments of your company to cover the organizational firm level, it will include all other aspects and then go on the supply chain network level. So kind of all these levels are very important. And I think interactive network branding consists of all. You're starting from the inside and going to the closest partners and then broader and kind of influencing the whole ecosystem, if you would call it like that. I'm not sure if that answers to your question.
Oh yes, oh yes. Thank you very much, Nicolina. I think Peter's question points us to the fact that you're relying on a varied literature. So in one breath you're talking about entrepreneurship literature, in another breath is resilience literature, then marketing literature, business strategy literature, and I think it's because you're dealing with a very important topic that is multidisciplinary in many ways. And I wish you well in your project. One of the things that fascinates me also is your use of practice-oriented research, from McKinsey, from some of these places. But I'm quite interested in your guiding theory. So, you've got to the stage where you want to sort of operationalize your research questions and test them out. But what is your guiding theory? Is there a theory that you're using? I know you talked about the VUCA model, but in terms of, be it resilience theory, I think there's the 4 C's theory, for instance. I mean, what sort of theory is guiding your work?
So when I started with interactive network branding in 2014, I started with kind of trying to contribute to the business network theory. So it's a supply chain level and how companies are collaborating together to create a better world, let's call it like that. The crisis wasn't occurring back then, at least not in this higher level. And then branding theory. And branding was so lacking so many things. First of all, they never even had this multi-stakeholder perspective on branding, which is now really a hot topic. So kind of I tried to combine these two fields that were completely not combinable. That's not the word, but you understand what I mean. So I tried to kind of criticize one stream and another one and then complement it with each other. But now we are moving into this multi-stakeholder perspective and into the crisis management, crisis literature, and trying to bring insights from sustainability and innovation. And again, those are 2 different streams of literature as well. And innovation goes also on organizational level and intra-firm level. And there is open innovation, all kinds of different aspects that nicely fit to the crisis literature. So how can we use innovation literature, and mostly open innovation I'm interested in, to complement these branding and networking literature? And sustainability, it's so broad and there are so many different nice ways to use it. And also the ethics, how can you do ethically the survival of your company and make sure that all your partners are kind of ethical as well? because non-ethicality of the supplier will influence you and destroy your reputation and kind of challenge the resilience and everything. So there are quite many different fields, and resilience is interdisciplinary concept. So in a sense, it's also very challenging to study.
Yes, thank you very much. And in terms of methodology, I'm just looking at your research project now. You've got to the stage where you've got research questions around path. Can't remember how you put it. Path, resilience, something like that.
Path to resilience, yes.
Yeah, path to resilience. So how do you? What's your methodology like?
So we are aiming towards mixed methodology. For now, we are recruiting companies to do qualitative kind of interviews, focus groups, and testing different models, what works, what doesn't work. We're trying also to keep it not so strictly theoretical, because if the SMEs are listening, they will get really bored, you know. So I'm trying also to get insights from consultancies and stuff, and from my experience from before, and just kind of testing and seeing and co-creating, basically multi-stakeholder co-creation again, to see what can be built that is actually applicable and usable for different firms. And in this project, we are focusing on Finnish firms. So we are also looking at how the war with Ukraine and Russia, because Finns have quite many business partners in Russia, and they needed to stop all these relationships. So how that influences the resilience? Did they manage to find alternatives really easily? How they are dealing with all that? So after that, we are trying to do the maybe qualitative study on a broader level and actually test some of the aspects. And when we build the interactive network branding model with different kind of hypotheses, then we are trying to kind of do real quantitative testing of variables and stuff, and then go back into qualitative, you know, and back and forth, some sort of abductive method to create really something beneficial, and not just for academic publications, but also for companies that will be involved.
Okay, thank you very much. That's a big task ahead of you. I wish you well with it. So I want to ask a final question, and then we can draw these to a close. But if colleagues want to have questions, you can use the Q&A chat function. I was also interested in some of your references. So you talked about the literature not so much having an holistic view of resilience, and you talk about these three levels: the individual, the entrepreneurial. Incidentally, I was having a conversation, I think about a week ago, in terms of survival skills, and I do like how you put the fact that learning how to succeed may be less important than or the lessons we learn from failure, and those sort of things. But I was just wondering, I know you showed us some literature references at the end, but I was just wondering where you are drawing your main literature from. Is it from like the Schumpeter type of entrepreneurship strand, or Kaizen? Where is the main body of your entrepreneurial resilience study? Where is it coming from?
So first of all, how we examine the resilience is for the first article that we are doing, it's the literature review. And then we just kind of explored all the literature reviews on the resilience and collected all those articles that were ever published. And we focused on the ABS list level 4 and level 3 and found 20 articles. And based on those top level publications that did the literature review, we are now kind of trying to make the holistic literature review. And there are these repetitive kind of aspects and characteristics that they are mostly talking about supply chains. We didn't find much on the individual level. So we went into the entrepreneurship marketing theory and practice. So it's level 4 journal. And there we are kind of just trying to extract some of the most relevant individual level entrepreneurial resilience articles. So we are complementing our literature review with those from the Entrepreneurship Theory and Practice journal as kind of the most representative and the highest level journal in the field. And we're actually aiming to submit there, so that's why kind of it makes sense to extract. But of course, there is much more going on, and I try to kind of find consultancy reports on the individual strength. So that's what I did by now. But the project is only 3 months going, so we are hoping to achieve much more in the next almost 4 years.
Good. And you've made a lot of progress in 3 months. So all the best with that. We have a paper that we're looking at. We're looking at spiritual capital and entrepreneurial resilience. Also in an SME context, we didn't call it VUCA, we called it turbulent SME environment where there are institutional voids, but also similar to the VUCA type of conceptualization. And here we're looking at how spiritual capital helps to moderate the impact of social capital and entrepreneurial resilience, the impact of political instability, and that sort of thing. So I'm quite interested in your work succeeding. I can send you the draft to look at if you just want to have a quick look. We did a survey of SMEs in Lagos and Nigeria. But it's been quite tricky to get it. It's a quant paper. We did structural equation model and some regressions, but it's a very interesting field of research. Yes. I'll do that. So okay. I'm going to draw this to a close. I'm very thankful for your presence and presentation, Nicolina. Thank you very much. And I also want to thank
you for inviting me
for your...
and thank you to participation. Yes.
Indeed. Thanks to participants for attending, for your questions. So on your screen, you would see a satisfaction poll. Please complete that. And we would see you at our next EOS webinar series. So once again, many thanks, Nicolina. Also, many thanks to Erica and Nicole, my colleagues who help put a lot of these together. And thanks to everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.